blended capital model, I think what we've seen is that space has been growing in the later stage investing markets where the economics are easier to facilitate that. And what I think has been slower to realize is how more grant and concessionary capital is brought into blended mechanisms to allow more blended mechanisms to service this missing middle, to service smaller ticket sizes. And what we are and have been seeing in the past few years is how we're starting to see more models, or really more kinds of blended funds, or new emerging fund managers who are taking the risk and being creative and fundraising themselves across the spectrum to get the grant capital that they set up these kind of funds, and then not only bring in the grant concessionary capital to the actual funding model to service the sector. And we're still in early days for that.
I do agree on the fact that we are conduits, the financiers in the space. We're matchmakers. So it is also our role to share with LPs what we see on the ground. And I do agree with Rama that there is also a certain frilosity from a certain typology of investors that could be very relevant for this space, more philanthropic, but also more DFIs. I want to say that DFIs do a lot for sure in this space, but sometimes we see them moving a little bit towards more of the commercial type of requirements that we see, honestly, private institutional capital ask us. So there is also just a bit of a reality check with some of our long-standing partners in the DFI community, where we have to have the honest conversation on the type of capital they manage versus the type of capital that's really needed, because they are the partners that know best these markets, that know best what and how we can do this together.
And so what then is the fund structure that can service this missing middle? And there are a lot of different models that are doing that, and it's still early days to prove out which ones are successful, or I would argue there's just a variety of ways that it can be done. And it, again, is going to take more impact investors, more donors, folks with concessionary grant capital, those realize the value of patient capital, which somebody was flagging in the chat, to then actually start to work with fund managers. Again, there's been this unfortunate divide between a lot of the donor traditional development world and fund managers, but I think that is changing, hopefully, more rapidly than we're seeing now. But again, we're going to continue to educate the more traditional players in this space with what for-profit seeking fund managers are need,